Hi, I'm Pastor Angie Lynch with The Truth Driven Life. Today we continue our series on Love 101. Today's topic is, what is your love communicating? Part 2. Come on in, take a look. And we are continuing our Love 101 series, and today is the second part. Last week we divided it in half because there's so much on communication. So we're going into what is your love communicating? Part 2. So let's say we're going to go for the announcements. Again, Sundays we're here at 10 a.m. Everybody is welcome to come. We also live stream at 10:30 a.m. Live stream people, if you'll drop a comment, say hi, do something. If you're catching it on replay, let us know you were here. We don't know if you're here if you don't say, but say hi. Christina's back there taking care of the comments and stuff like that and posting the links. So say hi to her. 10:30 live stream, or come join us in person at 10 a.m. We have an online community. You're welcome to join it. Christina will post a link down below. It's not like a secret society where nobody can join. Absolutely. If you are interested in spiritual growth, sign up. Okay, here's something that I'm excited about. I want you to save the date for this. It's Saturday, March 14th from 4 to 8 p.m. This is my pastor that's coming, and he does these spiritual growth workshops. And I'm very excited about it. I'll tell you what, as we did I don't know if anybody's read the challenge for today, but in the challenge for today, the challenge is to find somebody and call the gold out in them. And I'll say one thing that my pastor is extremely gifted at is calling the gold out in people. And essentially what that means is when you look at somebody, you don't look at their present circumstances. What you do is you can see them in the spirit. And you can see what God has inside them, not what the world has put on them. And it's a very unique gift in that when you can look at somebody and see what God has intended versus what circumstances maybe have overtaken their lives, it's really neat because then you can speak to the gold. And when you speak to the gold in people, you begin to release it and it begins to manifest. I know that in my life personally, he has spoke into the gold in my life. And it's been an amazing thing to see things that he has called out the gold in me. And at the time, I didn't even really see was there. I didn't even see that it was possible. But to see the things begin to manifest as, we speak and we call out the gold in people. So for this spiritual growth workshop, come and see my pastor do this because it is phenomenal. It is life-changing. He comes down every other month. We'll start in March. And then he'll come down 2 months after that in May. We have the women's retreat or the women's boot camp before then. But it is amazing. And the more that you practice, I would encourage everybody to practice the calling the gold out in people. See them through the eyes of God versus through our human eyes. Makes a big difference. And then the next day, he's staying over March 15th, and he'll be doing the service, the Sunday service. So I tell you what, it'll be a huge blessing for everybody, and for myself included. I'm super pumped and excited. Our next, we just had this last Wednesday, had our healing meeting. We have a healing meeting on the 4th Wednesday of every month, and it's just a really neat time. What we're doing right now, especially during the Love series, the things that we can't go over every Sunday, we're kind of dialing into and getting more specific. Like this past one, we continued on communication, and we went into learning how to form I statements and just different types of techniques. How to when you're trying to communicate assertively and somebody else isn't communicating assertively, some techniques to be able to stand your ground in those conversations. So really just empowering information. And then afterwards, we always have a prayer line, and anybody who wants prayer ministry, we have that. And have some really neat people here available to assist with that. So the next healing meeting, the 4th Wednesday of March, it'll be March 25th. Now, we have, I think, 5 spots left for the Women's Spiritual Boot Camp. If you haven't signed up, you can still sign up. And I just can't say enough about that. It's going to be an incredible experience. It's April 17th through 19th. Okay. Love 101, I included a little bit of last week so we can just review really quickly and then pick up where we left off. What I asked y'all to do at the beginning of the Love 101 series is to read 1 Corinthians 13 every day while we're going through this series, because it really will begin to ingrain in your mind. No, I'll read it off the slide. So we're going to start with reading 1 Corinthians 13. Though I speak with the tongues of men and angels, but have not love, I have become sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I could remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, but have not love, it profits me nothing. Love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself, is not puffed up, does not behave rudely, does not seek its own. It is not provoked, thinks no evil, does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Love never fails, but whether there are prophecies, they will fail. Whether there are tongues, they will cease. Whether there is knowledge, it will vanish. For we know in part and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect has come, then that is which in part will be done away. When I was a child, I spoke as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know just as I also am known. And now abideth faith, hope, and love, these three, but the greatest of these is love. Now, God's pretty serious about this love thing. And each week, if you haven't watched the entire series, I encourage you to go back. We make them all available on YouTube and on Facebook and on our website. So you can watch them anytime that you want to. So I encourage you to go back, because love is a foundational teaching. It is so incredibly important. We're going to be hanging out in 1 Corinthians 13 till we finish this series. And today we're going to zero in again on communications. This is going to be part 2. I'm going to read this part again, because in order to manifest love, we have to get our communication down. And part of getting our communication down is understanding what is the purpose of communication and why is it so important. And we really can learn how to hold our tongue in this, and we can learn how to project love instead of projecting fear. When communication goes wrong, what are we doing? We're just projecting our fear. We're projecting our fears, and we're protecting our fears. So let's read this again. Love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself. It is not puffed up. It does not behave rudely. It does not seek its own. It is not provoked, thinks no evil, does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in what? The truth. Bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. And we're going to talk about communication too today. I'm just going to do a brief recap. This is what we went over last week, but we split it in two. Your communication is either going to be fear-based or it's going to be love-based. And it looks very, very, very different. And you want to be able to understand whether I'm communicating fear or whether I'm communicating love. The last, part 1, we'll go over all this. We went over communication styles. Communication is basically, it's my responsibility to put what is in me on the outside, because you can't read my mind. If I'm going to be able to connect with you, if we're going to have any type of intimacy, I have to know myself, don't I? I have to know myself, and I have to be able to get what's inside on the outside. We went over the communication styles: passive communication, aggressive communication, passive-aggressive communication, and assertive communication. Guess what? The first 3, all fear-based. Last one, love-based. And I'm not gonna, you can watch the last sermon and go over that. Circle of trust. I want to go over the circle of trust again, because what's important is it's so key to communication. I have to have trust to be able to do this. I don't need to trust the other person. I need to trust God, and I need to be able to trust myself. So how trust gets established when we're little. I have a need. I express my need. If you take a baby, I'm hungry. As a baby, I cry. Somebody comes and responds to my need. I get my need satisfied. Therefore, I feel comforted. So when that happens, when that's the norm and that happens on a continual basis, I have the ability to be able to trust. I have the the pre-thought that, hey, people are I have the expectation that people are generally going to meet my needs, and that's a good thing because I have the ability to trust. Now, when my needs aren't met, this is what happens. It's a mistrust cycle. I have a need, I express my need, there's no response to it, it's left unsatisfied, and I'm not comforted. Now, what begins to happen when I live in a constant state of mistrust? Then I begin to do what? I begin to not trust. I begin to have an expectation with all my relationships that nobody is going to meet my needs. So when that begins to happen, I become very fear-based. Think about an infant. If you're solely as an infant dependent upon other people and you are consistently not getting your needs met, they do what? They learn to be manipulative. They learn to have temper tantrums. And that's not the only reason why they do that. But as adults, we begin to do that. When I get scared, somebody is not going to meet my needs because I know you're not, because I have no reason to believe that anybody is going to want to meet my need, what begins to happen? Then I operate out of a fear mindset versus a love mindset. I get controlling, I get manipulative, because why? Because you're not going to meet my need. I'm going to have to trick you into it. I'm going to have to talk you into it. I'm going to have to do everything that I can to control the situation, the surroundings, the people, the everything to get my need met. And that becomes very overwhelming, and it takes choice away from other people. So when we begin communication, we have to understand and ask ourselves, wow, do I communicate from a point of fear, or am I communicating from a point of love? Fear, mistrust, love, trust. And remember, we don't have to trust the world. You just have to trust in your God and your ability to deal with things. Does God have my back? God has my back. I'm going to be okay. No matter what my circumstances are, I'm going to be okay. The other way, I must control my environment, therefore things will go my way. But it doesn't work out that way. And it's exhausting. You can't control the things you can't control. Things you can control, things you can't. Anything you can't have the power to control, let it go. It's wasted energy. I can't control what somebody else thinks. I can't control what somebody else does, but I can control my response to what's going on. So that's kind of the circle of trust. We go over here. Okay, here's where we left off, and this is kind of the meat of what I want to get into. I want to go over right now some guidelines for healthy and loving communication. And what this means, these are just qualities that really need to be present, and ask yourself, wow, am I giving a foundation for this for my communication with other people? And like I said, I encourage you, if you didn't go over if you missed last week, go back over last week's sermon, because we go through the different communication styles. And this one is an assertive. If you're operating in assertive communication, these are just some guidelines to make sure that you stay on track with that. Here's our scripture. 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their labor. If they fall, one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who's alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up. Again, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one be warm alone? Though one may be overpowered by another, 2 can withstand him. And a threefold cord is not easily broken. Ecclesiastes 4, 9 through 12. I want you to kind of get a picture of this, because why do we work so hard to maintain connection? Why do we work so hard to maintain healthy communication? Why do we work so hard to be able to identify our needs so that we can communicate those? Because it keeps, if you think about the cords, it keeps our cord strong. If I have a threefold thread, it's easily broken, right? It's better than nothing. 3 are better than 1, but still, I want to exercise the strength of my cord like a muscle, and we do that by staying connected with each other, not being distant from each other. Think of the, I don't even know, you remember those ropes in the pool that section off the pool? Like, remember how thick, you ever like swim past one of those and accidentally rub it, or like your horse playing and it gets like, man, those are tough cords, right? And when I picture a 3 cord, I picture a big twisty strength cord like that, a cord that pulls up an anchor, something strong. And as we begin to practice healthy communication, practice connection, practice intimacy in our relationships, love grows stronger. And as love goes stronger, our cord grows stronger. And so when I think about this scripture, I want you to think about it. Am I strengthening my cord or am I weakening my cord? There's a saying that I always like that, say like in a chain. A chain can be strong, 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 but the weakest link is where it'll break, right? We want to practice to be strong in our areas in communication. When we think of protecting our body of Christ, we want to protect that connection. We want to help build everybody, and it becomes very, very important because we are connected together. So, the goal of communication is understanding, not agreement. We do not have to agree to be on the same page. The goal is understanding each other and respecting each other. And I can't say this enough. If you are trying to be right in a conversation, you are fear-based. If you're trying to understand the other person's perspective, if you're able to put your needs aside for a second and say, I'm just going to listen to what this person has to say, and not just listen so that you can develop an argument against it, so that you can truly, I have a mindset, wow, I want to understand where they're coming from, and have a respect for it, because everybody thinks different. Just because somebody doesn't think like I do doesn't make them less than. It doesn't make, oftentimes we think this way. We think that, wow, if somebody sees it from a different perspective, they're wrong, they're not seeing it correctly. Remember, as a team, as a core, we're supposed to bring balance to each other. So usually what's going to happen, when you have your spouse, one's going to be on this side of the spectrum, one's going to be on this side of the spectrum, and you bring balance and anchor each other in strength. But if I dismiss somebody else's point of view, I dismiss strength that is meant for me. The goal is to understand. We don't have to agree. Think of, just write that down on a piece of paper. Burn it into your brain. The goal is not agreement. I do not need you to agree with me. In order to feel heard, in order to feel seen, in order to feel valued, I just want to know you care and you understand what I'm saying, that you want to know my perspective. How many of y'all get that? In unhealthy and fear-based communication, we do want the other person to agree with us because we're afraid if they don't agree with us, then they won't do what we need them to do. And if they don't do what we need them to do, then our world implodes because it's all based off of it happening exactly like I need it to happen. And that's the problem with fear. But in a love-based relationship, we have a foundation of trust. I trust that you're going to take care of me. I trust that I'm going to take care of you. Doesn't mean everything's going to be perfect, but what it does mean is that I care. I want to show up in the relationship. I want to understand where you're coming from. And we don't have to agree. We're not twins. We're not clones. We can have a difference of opinion, yet still be on the same page because we're working towards understanding each other. The second one is I value my thoughts, feelings, and needs as well as yours. Now, remember, two empowered people, equal footing. Well, let me read through this. I understand how to respectfully enter your world. I understand how to invite you into my world. Equal footing is two empowered people. Unequal footing is two powerless people. Now, what happens is I have to value my thoughts and you have to value your thoughts, and we have to value each other's thoughts for assertive communication style to happen. I can't be like, oh, my needs aren't important, it's whatever you want. No, because that's a lie. It's not being honest. I have needs. I just might be uncomfortable communicating them. If you're in a conversation and somebody begins to say, well, whatever you want. Oh no, stop that conversation right there. Why? Because then things just became unbalanced. And you want to have a conversation where two people are on even footing. Because if we're on equal footing, then what can happen? Then my needs are important, your needs are important. My thought, and that's really the foundation of respect. We don't have to agree. We don't have to believe everything the same, but I need to understand that your thoughts and your feelings and your needs are as equally valid as mine. Just because I don't understand it doesn't make it stupid. It doesn't. This is a key thing for healthy communication. I have to value my needs. I have to value your needs. I have to value my thoughts. I have to value your thoughts. and vice versa, because that's how respect is maintained. And if you not, it's kind of like why, we get, one of the biggest things, I would say, for inappropriate relationships, say like, there's a lot of things coming out about in school where a teacher violates a child, and then some people are like, well, it was in high school, they were only, 6 years. No, the biggest part of, beyond it's just wrong, is that there's an imbalance of power. You have one person who has all the power and the other one that doesn't have the power. And that creates a very destructive relationship. Now that's an example, and a very illegal example, and it's not right. But also, I want you to begin to think of that in your other relationships. If you're having a conversation with somebody and they think that they're below you, no. You make it clear, hey, we're equal here. We're equal here. Like, you don't take that, no, if somebody tries to get power over you, no, that's not okay. If somebody tries to get power under you, that's not okay. Because we can't have a connection at all if we aren't on equal footing. And that is very, very important. And remember, it's my needs as well as their needs. It can't be just like, I can't just value somebody else's needs. A lot of people in here are givers. Like, you're not Mother Teresa. You're not like, oh, my needs are nothing. You have needs, and God wants to meet your needs. It's kind of when Lauren was talking about receiving. This is exactly another way to say this is, I have to be able to receive and I have to be able to give. 3, I remove myself when disrespect enters a conversation. We must understand disrespect isn't someone not agreeing with me. Someone is not disrespecting me if they disagree with me. Disrespect becomes about how somebody disagrees. I still must guard a connection. I won't sweep it under the rug. We can disagree and still maintain respect. Now this is key, because we all can, as soon as somebody gets in fear, the conversation becomes disrespectful. You have to guard against it. You can't control what somebody else is going to do, but you want to control what you are going to do. If you're going to allow, you're the gatekeeper for your life. Now, somebody can disagree with me, somebody can be upset, somebody can have intense emotions, but what somebody cannot do is be ugly to me. I might take it for a second. I might say, okay, like let them, we want to give a second for them to compose themselves. But if somebody starts insulting me, if somebody starts putting me down, if somebody starts trying to define me, no, we're going to end this conversation until we can come back and have a conversation where we both can respect each other. And I want to say too, this goes for if you're in a conversation and you're finding your level of disrespect really elevating and you're not able to control your temper, you're not able to control your tone, you're not able to control what's coming out of your mouth, stop, back up, compose yourself. If you're not able to do that, table that conversation. Table it. Because why? Because nothing, if it enters into a disrespect zone, it's fear-based and nothing will be resolved. The only thing is more hurt's going to be added. But I tell you what, some of us, like I'm one of the, like if something's amiss, like I just want to solve it and I'll just go to the mat with it. But that we have to understand, we have to maintain a level of respect in that. And if I cannot maintain a level of respect and love for that person and treat them first and foremost as a child of God, then I need to remove myself. It's not they can be saying all the inflammatory things in the world. I am responsible for what comes out of my mouth. And that's what I mean by, we need to gatekeep. And I am responsible for moving myself from a disrespectful, unhealthy conversation. It'd be fantastic if everybody treated us with respect, but you don't live in that world. So if you are being disrespected, and in the process of removing yourself, don't be disrespectful to the other person. Don't be like, you are so disrespectful, you do not deserve my presence. Like, that is in itself disrespectful to the other person. Because what? You're not trying to insult the other person. What are you trying to do? Well, maybe you are, but let's not do that. What are you trying to do? I'm trying to be accountable for what's about to come out of my mouth and what I'm allowing to come into my space. I'm being accountable for that. If I don't like to be disrespected, and hear me, that doesn't mean that somebody disagrees with me. It's if somebody is truly speaking ugly to me, it's a big, big, big difference. But I would say, begin to understand what disrespect is. It's a tone. Like, it can be so subtle. And I always tell couples, the tricky thing about disrespect is once it enters into a relationship, that is something that's hard to roll back. Just like, I say to couples, don't say the divorce word. Don't get mad and say, well, I'm just going to divorce you. I regret. No. Like, there's just some boundaries that you just need not to cross. Why? Because once you go there, it's just too easy to go there again. And so this is a key one. Being able to, if I'm not able to react in a manner which is consistent with what I desire my character to be, I need to say, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm getting too heated here. I can't treat you how I want to treat you, and it's not your fault. It's, I'm being triggered. I'm losing my mind. I'm just, this situation is really upsetting. I need to compose myself for a minute. Just let me push pause on this just a second. And I need to be able to do that, and I need to be able to ask somebody to do that. 4, we are honest and communicate our true feelings and needs. Here, I am very serious about this. You do not have to save somebody else from your thoughts or your feelings. I'm not talking about being rude and how you express your thoughts and your needs and your feelings, but if you get the mindset that somehow you are so powerful that if you share something with somebody, it is going to crater their world, you are lying to yourself. Because the truth is you are uncomfortable and you don't want to risk the other person's reaction. That's all it is. Don't act like you're doing it to do somebody a favor. You're doing it it's a self-protection thing. If I don't want to tell you that I don't want to go here with you because I don't want you to be mad, that's not true. That's a lie. What I don't want is I don't want your reaction. But that's something I don't get to choose. That's something I don't get to control. I get to want what I want, and you get to want what you want, and we can be honest about that, because when you get, I have a need, you have a need, let's negotiate from there. And different relationships are different. If it's your spouse relationship, sorry, when you got married, guess what you signed up for? You signed up for, sometimes when you step on the relationship pillow, 2 people have to be okay with the outcome. That's what you signed up for. So, but that is highly possible when you begin to respect each other. And other relationships in your life, you don't have to be clones of each other. Just because somebody doesn't want to do something doesn't mean they don't like you. It means, there's a lot of other things that can be at play in that. But it's important to be able to communicate, and that I feel like I can say, this is how I feel. And like I was saying in the healing meeting last Wednesday, when we went over I statements and what is the best way to kind of put that forward. And we uploaded the notes into the group, so if you're interested in that, goes over very precisely how to do that. But it becomes important that I am able to express my need in an honest fashion, because I call it a mixed message. If I want something but I'm saying something else, I'm communicating a mixed message. Out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. So I don't care how good you think you're being at hiding something, you're sending a mixed message. And I tell you what, when you send somebody a mixed message, they don't trust you. Because a lot of times people won't know exactly what it is. They're just like, I don't know. And sometimes, as a manipulative technique, what do? We send mixed messages so people beg us to talk. Well, I don't want to talk about it. Oh, come on, I think you're mad at me. No, I'm not. Well, and so we have to go through that for 30 minutes, and they're like, oh, okay, well, no one should have to beg you to talk about your feelings. Why? I get it. Sometimes we grow in this. But if you are constantly in a state where you think people need to beg you to talk about your feelings, it's manipulating and it's controlling and it's fear-based. And stop it. Because you are responsible for showing up, knowing what your needs are, asking what your needs are in a mature, responsible way, not a manipulative way. If you want love, if you want a fear-based relationship, that's what that creates. But a fear-based relationship is miserable because there is no trust, there is no foundation. Everything is always in jeopardy, and it just doesn't leave for that full bloom of love to grow in that. 5, I will not expect you, I guess I kind of went into this also. I will not expect you to know my feelings and needs unless I have clearly communicated them. And the key here is clearly. I just said that, but that was my note too. It is my job, say my job, to let you know what is going on inside of me. It is not your job to read my mind. And this one is huge in relationships, and especially in a fear-based relationship. If you love me, you would just know. No. We are all different people. We come from different experiences, different mindsets, different personality, different giftings, different everything. So I am responsible for communicating clearly what my needs are. You are not responsible for reading my mind. Now, this is different. Like when I said, if I have clearly communicated my needs and somebody is ignoring it, that's one thing. But I promise you, when somebody's like, well, they know, if I walk them through a process of let's figure out if they really know, they usually don't know. Because in order for you to communicate clearly, you have to one, you have to know what your need is. And then two, you have to not send a mixed message. Well, he knows how important it is that he brings me flowers. Last time he brought you flowers, you're like, oh, you shouldn't have. A mixed message. Like, there are tons of times when we have to step back and say, wow, what am I communicating? And am I communicating something clearly? If I'm upset about something and somebody says something like, hey, are you upset about that? And I'm like, nope. No, that's a mixed message. A better way to say that is, you know what? I do feel the tension that you're talking about. I'm not really sure what it is. It's okay. You don't have to know what it is. You can feel in tension. You can feel uncomfortable, and you don't have to know exactly what it is or how to fix it. But just be honest. You know what? I do feel that tension. I'm not really sure where that's coming from. Let me think about that. Let me figure that out. Like, you don't have to be like, no, when clearly you're on level 6 of irritation. Because is that a mixed message? Yes. And that sends, even further, it sends like, I don't trust you with my feelings. I don't trust you're going to meet it just communicates a lot of stuff that is fear-based, that is not love-based. You don't have to have something all figured out. You can say, wow, you know what? I did notice that I got, what do they say? The hair on my back? I got my hair up, or whatever that saying is. Like, I noticed that I got irritated. I noticed I got triggered. I noticed that that took me by surprise. Like, you don't have to immediately just act like nothing's wrong. Because I promise you, if you're with anybody that's close to you, if you get irritated, they know. They can just feel your energy. You don't even have to say anything. They can come into a room and they're like, putting things down a little bit harder than they usually do. You're like, oh, you upset? No, I'm fine. Your pitch of your voice goes up. Like, you just tell on yourself. Out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. You can't hide it. 6, I will not make judgments or tell you how to, it should be make, it says much, but make change in order to meet my needs. I will not be emotionally lazy. It is not your responsibility to change for something I am responsible for. I ask for what I need. I demand you change. You can't do that. I ask for what I need. I can't demand for you to change. This is so huge. Like, it goes back to that responsibility. It's not because if you do something different, you suck and you need to change that. One of a cardinal rule for unconditional love is I accept you for how you are. Say you have one person that talks a lot, one person that doesn't talk enough. There's nothing wrong with either. There's nothing wrong with talking too much, and there's nothing wrong with talking too little, except your styles don't mesh. It kind of works for a while when you first start dating, because one person's and the other person's just listening, and you're like, oh my gosh, I've never felt so heard. Well, fast forward 5 years in a relationship, and that's like, they don't ever talk. They don't ever say anything. Oh my gosh, she's always like that. That's how that you fast forward on something, and that's what happens. So it's not that one person is too quiet, one person is too talkative, but that's where, if you're in a relationship, you have to step on the relationship pillow and you have to negotiate. If I'm upset, my tendency is going to be to talk. Somebody's tendency might be to shut down. Guess what? People who talk have a tendency to pair with people who shut down. So does that need to be accounted for in a relationship? Yes. If I'm saying to somebody, you talk too much, well, you just need to quit talking. I might need to quit talking. They might need to speak up, but that's for the Lord to talk about usually, right? Because usually in an argument or a fight, no one is saying it in a kind way. So
Unconditional love. Can I accept you how you are? Can I not ask you to change? Now, what I can do is, in my life, I should have a standard. You know, if somebody's single and they're dating somebody that is, I don't know, lying, like, you can ask that person not to lie, but at the same time, like, that has to be independently important to that person, right? I can have a standard of no lies. I can have a standard of something, and I don't have to place a judgment on that person. It's my standard. If I want, say we have a lot of single people, if I want somebody with brown hair, and that's a very superficial example, I get to pick what I want to pick. If that's my standard, that's my standard. It doesn't mean somebody with blonde hair sucks, red hair sucks. It means I have a preference. And I need to understand that my preferences don't mean somebody else has a character flaw. That's not how it works. So this is a lot of what that is about. I'm responsible for telling you what I need. It doesn't mean you suck in that area. It means that I have preferences. And like I said, and then there's also standards. It's not, if you don't, like, and this is hard, if somebody's dating somebody and it's unequally yoked, that's why we talk about that. Because why? Because if it's unequally yoked, you can't require them to come up to your level in that. That's between them and God. It's, you find somebody that, whatever is your deal breaker list, you find somebody that's also their deal breaker list. That's how that works. It doesn't, I've seen people who are like, my faith is so important, but then they're going to date somebody that's not actively doing what they're doing. In a Christian, I'm not saying everybody has to come to church, everybody has to do something like that, but wherever your level of standard is, there has to be somebody else on that level of standard. Either you're always going to try to change them, or they're always going to try to change you, and that doesn't work. The things that are important to you have to be equally important to them, independent of you. They can't just, there's some characteristics people can't do just because they want to impress you. They can, but if it's not built into their lifestyle, it won't be sustainable. And you don't have a right to go and tell everybody how they should and shouldn't live. Okay, number 7, I will be a good listener. When you communicate your needs, I will not make it about me. Some people need to write that down twice. When you communicate your needs, I will not make it about me. I want to understand how my life is affecting you. I want to understand how I can meet your needs. I'll tell you what, people would think being a good listener is easy. Being a good listener is a skill that you have to practice and you have to acquire if you're going to truly listen to somebody. Because in order to listen, I have to put my mind, here's my mind, my mindsets, I'm going to put it aside because I'm going to enter your world. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear what's important to you. I want to hear how you think. Think about it. I always tell people, like, especially if you're in a relationship, you better make that other person your hobby. In the way that, like, if you pick up a hobby, you're like, you want to know everything about it. You want to know the ins and outs and how it works and how it doesn't and all that stuff. Like, why would you not do that with the person you're closest in the world to? Like, get to know them. Get to know what makes them tick. Not in a, like, oh, I have power, I know all these things, but in a, man, I want to understand this thing I love so much. It's important. Because we all want to feel like somebody cares. We all want to feel, understood and seen to a degree. But think about it. When we get scared or when we get wounded, what ends up happening? Then it becomes all about us. Like, you can take the most mature person in the world, and as soon as they get scared, they just dumped everything in the world but their fears. And their fears are what they're trying to bond with at that time. Like, and they're trying to speak to their fears. They're trying to, like, okay, fear, we're afraid of this. Okay, I'm going to make sure all my energy is going to go so that doesn't happen. And that's how those relationships kind of get pushed that way. So be a good listener. Listen to understand. Don't listen to respond. That's so aggravating. How many times, like, you're in a conversation with somebody and what can you do? You can sit there and you can see that they're sitting there formulating. Sometimes I'll just stop, especially if it's in a client session. I'll be like, I need you to listen to me and quit trying to figure out how to answer me. I'll give you time to figure out how to answer me. Because why? Because when somebody's doing that, you can't listen. You can't listen and formulate. This is not a debate. A communication is a dialogue back and forth. Hearing, understanding. A debate is, I'm trying to change your mind, you're trying to change my mind. Horrible. That's fear-based. 8, I'm committed to protecting and nurturing our connection. Understand, and we're going to go through, next we're going to go through real quick some ways to protect connection. So the reason this is important is if I don't protect connection, we drift apart. If we drift apart, we're no longer a support system for each other. We're no longer playing on the same team. We're no longer on the same side. Then what ends up coming in, whether it's a friend, whether it's a spouse, whatever it is, as soon as that connection starts to dissolve, I care less. It's hard for me to want to understand you. It's hard for me to want to be respectful outside of just the general, I'm a respectful person. That connection becomes key. 9, I will create a safe environment for you to be vulnerable. I understand vulnerability can be raw. Excuse me. I will protect our emotional and spiritual space. I will not share private conversations. Important to protect that space. If somebody comes to you and unburdens their soul to you, first of all, we want to not unburden our soul to people that aren't in our inner circle, not are safe. There's a place to do it. And a lot of times when we get hurt, we figure out we did it with unsafe people, and we just want to learn better the environment to share in. But also, when somebody shares something precious with you, understand that that's precious from that person and guard it and protect it. Don't cheapen it by going to tell somebody else. Don't cheapen it by, making fun of it or anything like that. And different people, I would say, you have different gifts. And in your different gifts, what ends up happening is sometimes people, if I'm in a grocery store, people will come up to me sometimes, and then all of a sudden, just because of the gift, will just unburden. And then 5 minutes later, when the reality of everything comes back, they're like, oh my gosh, I've never told anybody that. I can't believe I told you that. And what I try to do is just reassure, no, it's fine. Thank you for sharing with me. I try to comfort that as much as possible, because sometimes we do. If we don't share with our inner circle, what happens is we build up until the dam bursts, and hopefully the person in front of us is a safe person at that time, right? So I want you to kind of think about those things. When somebody shares a secret with you, when somebody shares something vulnerable with you, understand the value of that and guard that and protect that. Be honoring of that. 10, it's my job to keep my heart right. And this is so important. I put this the last, but this is key. You know how much less conflict you'll have in your life if you'll check in with your Father first before you go to check in with somebody else? Father, I'm upset about this. Show me my part in this. Because you could leave a conversation and be like, I'm gonna have to go and talk to that person, and then you talk to God and you're like, okay, I'm fine. It was me. Talk to your Father first. It's my responsibility to keep my heart right. A lot of times, iron sharpens iron. Why is that? Because in the process of being with other Christians, in the process of being with your community, you will get upset. You will get hurt. You can't bump up against that many people and not get offended, not get hurt. The key is, what am I going to do with it? How am I going to respond to it? I'm always going to go, Father, I know you know that person's crazy, and you know it's their fault, and I know it's their fault. But I'm just going to check in with you first. I kid you not. Sometimes I will do that. I know it's not me, but I'm going to check that off my list. And yeah, guess what? Turns out it's me. And when God deals with our attitudes first, you'd be surprised how your mindset towards the other person can shift. And even if it's something you have to go to them and you have to talk and you have to discuss, you can do it in love then, and not in bitterness and anger and frustration, because God helps you get your ducks in order. Okay, now that's 10 guidelines for loving communication. Now I want to talk to you really quick about when conflict goes sideways. Now, there's always going to be the case where somebody loses it. You can have two mature, healthy people, and because we all are broken people, if I get triggered, if I get upset about something, if I'm projecting another situation on the current situation, communication is going to go sideways. We all have those conversations where we're not the best versions of ourselves. And if you are having a conversation with somebody and this happens, whether it be you, whether it be the other person, let's talk a minute about that. And I put the scripture in here again because remember, we protect the connection. It's not about, oh my gosh, how dare you be ugly to me? How dare you do, no. As soon as I notice something's off, as soon as I notice usually a loving person get into fear, I'm immediately going to snap to the fact that what? Wow, this isn't how this person normally responds. What's up? Is this person okay? I'm not going to be offended. I don't want to get the spirit of offense. Oh my gosh, how dare this person? No, I'm going to get more curious about it. So let's read this again. 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their labor. If they fall, one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who is alone when he falls. He has no one to help him up. Again, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one be warm alone? Though one may be overpowered by another, 2 can withstand him. A threefold cord is not easily broken. Ecclesiastes 4:9-12. I want you to keep that in mind. Protecting the connection, another way to say that is let's keep our cord strong. Let's keep our cord strong. Let's not weaken our cord by how we speak to each other, by our actions against each other. Let's keep our cord strong by the way we love each other. Protect the connection. For one, when conflict goes sideways, not if it goes sideways, when it goes sideways, because it will go sideways. Remember, our goal is to protect the connection. For one, we want to recognize the conflict is going sideways. Recognize when fear creeps in. Fear language is very different than love language. Powerless thinking, powerless statements, very different than empowered. You know, as soon as somebody in a conversation's like, you don't care, you don't, okay, wait a minute, I think our conflict went sideways. I think we're talking about something that I'm not fully aware of what we're talking about, like I'm not cued in on all the information. We just want to become aware. Because as soon as I can become aware, I'm not going to take the bait, I'm not going to jump in, I'm not going to get a defensive posture. I'm going to be like, wait a minute, there's something different about this conversation. Let me just listen. So we're going to keep quiet and we're going to watch. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reaffirm my desire and help them understand I want to meet their needs. So you can say things like, we're on the same side. I'm in this with you. Key is don't allow the foundation of love to be threatened. Like, if you talk to me like that, you're going to have to leave and I'm never coming back. Or you leave and I'm never, like, don't say things like that because they're damaging. When somebody is already in fear, more fear added to that is hysterical. That's what happens. People get hysterical. So when you recognize that fear is there, don't respond with fear. Even if you have to be talking yourself off a ledge, you know, whoever in that moment is the most rational has to really be like, okay, I got to take this for the team. And you just do. You can talk about everything else later, but in that moment, you got to take it for the team. And you have to say to yourself, wow, this person is responding in fear. I'm recognizing that they're responding in fear. My gut maybe is to get defensive or to respond in fear, but I'm not going to do that because then that's going to create 2 hysterical people. So very important. What I'm going to say is, hey, I'm on your side. I'm not the enemy. I want us to understand. I want a positive outcome for both of us. Like, sometimes we just have to remind each other. You know, we all come from broken places. And sometimes in a relationship, when somebody is expressing fear, what they're afraid of is real to them in that moment. And it's so easily diffused if you don't throw extra fear on there. If you just say, hey, I'm in this with you. I get it. Like, I'm sorry. I'm trying to help. I'm not trying to be a hindrance. Like, just soft words like that when somebody is in fear is helpful, isn't it? So helpful. It really, I promise you, can de-escalate so many situations. Especially, like I said, if you're talking to a person that's usually rational. Another way to protect a connection is you have to put your needs on hold for the moment. Servanthood in core relationships is so vital. Like, if fear has entered, there's nothing getting resolved. And what do I need to do? I need to protect the connection at that point. Hey, Let's sit down. Let's talk about this. Wow, I think there's more to this than I recognized initially. I'm sorry if I dismissed it. I want to hear. I want to understand. Let's protect that connection. Let me put my needs. I might have a need, but guess what? You're not going to die if you put your need on the shelf for a conversation. I promise. Because if you're in the type of relationship where you both are doing this for each other, then everybody's needs get met. But understand that sometimes we just aren't capable. Sometimes our capacity in certain areas, we're broken, and we need a little love to get us through that. And that's actually what helps strengthen. You know, newsflash, if you're in a conversation and you're not acting in a way that you are okay with, but you're kind of just triggered and kind of going crazy in that, it's not helpful when somebody points out like, ooh, what's up with you? Like, what's helpful is like, wow, I see you're upset. Talk to me. I want to know more. I don't understand, but I want to understand. Like, there's language that you can use that will bring you and move you forward to connection versus take you away. Now, this is almost going to sound like contradictory, but I promise you it's not. Because in order to protect a connection, we have to keep boundaries healthy. That means if somebody starts to cuss me, look, I want to hear what you have to say, but I have too much respect for myself for you to listen to you speak to me that way. Let's just take a break for 5 minutes. We'll come back. I want to understand you. I want to figure out what's going on. I'm not trying to not talk to you about this. I'm not going to be spoken to that way. You can set your boundary in a loving way, but you are the gatekeeper for your life. If somebody is, no. Like, sometimes conversations, if they get too disrespectful and they can't get back on course, they need to end for that time. Because I am responsible for what's going to come out of my mouth. You are responsible. If I see a situation in which a normally rational person is very irrational, I want to care enough for that person to be like, okay, let me shut this down, because I'm not going to add fire on this. I'm not going to put fuel on it. I'm going to try to settle it down. But in that, I'm also going to set my boundaries in a healthy way that's still loving for the other person. I'm not saying I reject you. I'm not saying screw you, you're messed up. I'm not saying anything like that. If a person is already in a fear mindset, I don't want to create shake their abandonment issues, shake their rejection issues. So I want to speak to that. I want to speak to the foundation of our relationship. Look, I know that it feels horrible right now, but I also want you to know that I'm committed to working this out. But I can't let you speak to me like this, so we have to put it on pause. There's a lot of ways that you can have a healthy respect for somebody, a healthy respect for yourself, and remove yourself and put a pause on that conversation till it can be returned to in a way that some type of positive thing can result from it. Now, this is the other thing. To protect the connection, it doesn't have to be solved in one conversation. Understand, some issues are so huge, some issues are so, like, it's like walking through a landmine, that we might have to have several conversations till we come to an end where both people feel good about the conversation. And by good, I don't mean like everybody's like, wow, that was fantastic. I mean that I feel like you heard me. I feel like I heard you. We came to a solution that works for the both of us. And sometimes that solution is we agree to disagree, but we honor and we respect each other in that. But that is key. You don't have to have that conversation past your coping skills. As soon as things start getting too heated and you see there is no solution that is going to be had, okay, you know what? Let's pick this back up. Let me think on it. You said a lot. I said a lot. Let me think on that. Let me, and honestly pray. Pray for an understanding of how the other person is feeling, is thinking. Because anytime I think that I'm 100% right and I'm always right, like, I'm immediately wrong. Because statistically, you can't be always right. And statistically, you can't be always wrong either. So you want to have that mindset. Okay? So our challenge, that concludes part 2 on what are you communicating, what is your love communicating. I really want y'all to think about that this week. Our challenge is, are you actively seeking to stay connected in your relationships? Next week, we're going to talk about connection, and we're going to talk about intimacy and vulnerability in relationships, and because it's key. You know, all this stuff we've needed up to then. We need to know how to have boundaries. We need to know how to have communications. And then when we get those things in place, what can we do? We can go a little deeper in our relationships. We can go a little deeper in our relationships with ourselves and with other people. We can't just always talk about the weather and expect to have a strong connection, right? No. So I want you to ask yourself, wow, what are you doing to protect the connections in your relationships? And ask the Lord. Don't just ask yourself, because yourself will give you the same old answer you've been giving yourself. Like, get fresh perspective on that. So let's pray. Dear Lord, we humbly come before you, Lord. We ask that you just be with us this week, Lord, that you speak life into our relationships, into our communication, that you just help us discern those areas in which we are sabotaging our connection with ourselves, with you, and with other people. We just thank you, Lord, that you just are a Father, just Papa God, that you just want to speak to us and speak to us just in the most intimate detail about everything in our life, Lord, for you care about everything in our life, and we thank you for that. We ask that you just, as we communicate during this week, you just bring to our mind, am I keeping that connection? Am I breaking that connection? Lord, that we just desire not a worldly mindset for love, not a fear-based mindset, Lord, but we desire a kingdom mindset, a love mindset. Lord, we desire to think like you, and Lord, to act like you. And Lord, we have the mind of Christ, but we don't always identify with it, Lord. So when we're not identifying with it, Lord, please just show us your way. In your Son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen. So everybody is going to be an amazing community.